підтримки. Щойно я говорив з президентом Сполучених Штатів Америки, з президентом Трампом. Привітав його з днем народження, з Днем американської армії. Сьогодні два свята в Америці, і ми дуже добре поговорили з ним.
As the G7 opens in France, is Volodymyr Zelensky now resorting to flattery and phone diplomacy while Donald Trump all but ghost him on the official schedule? After Benjamin Netanyahu found himself left out of key meetings, has Zelensky now joined the list of leaders effectively booted from Trump's France trip agenda? As Ukraine's battlefield challenges deepen and troop numbers shrink, is Washington increasingly looking the other way instead of offering the full-throated backing Zelensky wants? If the US is slowly abandoning Ukraine at the diplomatic level, is Vladimir Putin now moving to take advantage of Zelensky's growing sense of isolation and helplessness? As G7 leaders gather in France, Volodymyr Zelensky is facing what looks like a fresh diplomatic snub from Donald Trump, who has chosen not to prioritize Kyiv on his public agenda. According to reports, Trump has not scheduled an official G7 bilateral meeting with the Ukrainian president, leaving Zelensky without the high-profile sit-down he was hoping for. US officials say Trump's formal G7 bilaterals will instead feature leaders from France, India, Qatar, and the United Arab Emirates, underscoring where the White House wants to focus its time. Egypt has also made it onto Trump's official meeting list, according to the same reports, while Ukraine remains conspicuously absent despite the ongoing war. Notably, Zelensky is still expected to join at least one G7 working session alongside other world leaders, giving him a limited platform but not the one-on-one spotlight he wanted. For now, reports suggest the Ukrainian leader can only hope for a brief sideline encounter with Trump, rather than a structured, agenda-driven bilateral meeting. Interestingly, Trump's close ally, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, is also not expected to attend the G7 talks, highlighting how both wartime leaders are currently off the main stage. Interestingly, Zelensky did speak with Donald Trump on June 14th, just before the summit, in an apparent attempt to shore up the relationship ahead of the high-profile meetings. Reports say the call lasted around 30 to 35 minutes and covered both the situation on the battlefield and the wider diplomatic track, including Ukraine's needs from Washington and its allies.
Бажаю здоров'я, шановні українці і українки. Щойно я говорив з президентом Сполучених Штатів Америки, з президентом Трампом. Привітав його з днем народження, з Днем американської армії. Сьогодні два свята в Америці, і ми дуже добре поговорили з ним. Не тільки привітання були, багато ключових тем і про війну, і про її коріння, і про дипломатичні можливості, і про позиції наших партнерів. Говорили довго, дуже детально. У нас побажання одне для президента Трампа, у всіх українців, щоб нарешті вдалося досягти миру, щоб ми змогли досягти цього успіху разом з Америкою, разом з усіма нашими партнерами. Це найголовніше, чого ми всі хочемо. І важливо, що американське суспільство повністю підтримує це наше українське прагнення до достойного миру, підтримує нас у захисті від російської війни. І абсолютно правильні слова президента Трампа сьогодні були, зокрема, про наш Крим. Саме із захоплення Криму Росією все почалося. І щоб, якби тоді було сильне лідерство, то усієї війни просто не було б. Я подякував президенту Сполучених Штатів Америки за всю допомогу, яку надали Сполучені Штати. Ми домовились про нашу з ним зустріч. Найближчими днями в Європі будуть формати Групи 7. Звісно, Україна і наш захист, наші можливості прийти до миру будуть серед головних тем. Є вже активний графік на весь наступний тиждень, також з нашими європейськими партнерами і усіма учасниками Групи 7. Важливий буде тиждень. Розраховуємо на результати. Передусім, безумовно, ППО для України, політичні домовленості, які посилять наш захист тут в Україні, буде відкриття кластеру. Кластер для України та Молдова і кроки на довготривалий мир. Обговоримо з нашими партнерами деякі ідеї, поки що не публічні. Сьогодні є також за що нам подякувати, особливо Британії. Затримали російський нафтовий танкер своїх берегів. І це перший такий крок саме британців. За цей рік в європейських морях стали доброю традицією затримки російського тіньового флоту. Нафта має зупинятись, щоб російська війна наближалась до зупинки. Дякую, Британії. Будемо говорити з партнерами в Європі і про те, щоб законодавчі зміни нарешті дозволили надовше арештовувати танкери, які заробляють гроші на війну для Путіна, виключно для нього, і конфісковувати цю нафту. Сьогодні ми в Україні оприлюднили також свіжі дані від розвідок про звіти та документи, які кладуть на стіл російському керівництву, неприємні для нього звіту, і то ще не повністю правдиві. Рейтинги і Путіна, і його правлячої партії знижуються дуже відчутно, тенденцію не змінити. Він про це повинен знати, повинен це відчувати. Особливо відповідаючи негативно на наші пропозиції зустрічі, перемовин, реального закінчення війни. Звісно, вдячний кожному нашому воїну, усім українцям, які захищають позиції нашої держави, які працюють на Україну, які допомагають нам відстоювати національні наші українські інтереси. Цього літа треба бути усім максимально ефективними, активними. Жодного дня не втрачаємо і не втрачаємо жодної можливості. Розраховуємо на результати від наступного тижня і працюємо на це. Слава Україні!
This latest diplomatic snub comes as Zelensky grapples with a mounting troop shortage crisis at home, trying to sustain a grinding war effort with fewer soldiers and diminishing Western attention. Ukraine's president has announced sweeping changes to military service rules and compensation structures, aimed at strengthening morale and improving retention within the armed forces. Volodymyr Zelensky said the reforms were developed after extensive consultations with senior military commanders and top government officials. The plan includes a record increase in pay for infantry soldiers, designed to better reflect frontline risks and improve recruitment in critical combat units. Additional combat bonuses are also being introduced, offering extra financial incentives for troops engaged in high-intensity operations. Fixed-term service contracts will be introduced for soldiers, providing clearer timelines and more structured career pathways within the military. A 6-month exemption from mobilization will be granted to soldiers who successfully complete their service contracts, as part of efforts to encourage re-enlistment and stability. Rules governing transfers between military units will be eased, allowing for greater flexibility and faster reallocation of personnel where they are most needed. Procedures for soldiers seeking to return to service after going absent without leave have also been simplified, aiming to bring experienced personnel back into active duty more efficiently. The defense minister said Ukraine needs a military service model built on respect, fairness, and clear rules, as part of wider efforts to reform the armed forces. Volodymyr Zelensky's government hopes the changes will improve recruitment, retention, and overall morale across the country's military ranks. A key part of the strategy includes expanding the recruitment of foreign fighters to support overstretched frontline units. Mikhailo Fedorov said Ukraine aims to fill around 30 to 50% of infantry and assault roles with foreign volunteers. Officials believe foreign volunteers could help ease pressure on domestic recruitment efforts, which have struggled under sustained wartime demands. The reforms come as Ukraine continues to face a chronic manpower shortage after years of ongoing conflict and battlefield losses. Many soldiers are reported to have spent years on the front lines without a clear pathway to demobilization or formal discharge. Officials also say a large number of troops are now exhausted after more than 3 years of intense and continuous combat operations. Newly mobilized soldiers have often been described as less motivated, particularly in high-risk infantry roles where pressure and casualties remain highest. Ukraine is reportedly struggling to secure funding for its $6.2 billion energy resilience plan, raising concerns about whether critical infrastructure projects can be completed before the onset of another difficult winter. Kyiv is racing against time to strengthen its energy grid and protect essential services as officials prepare for the possibility of renewed Russian strikes on power infrastructure during the colder months. The funding challenges facing Ukraine's energy sector were highlighted in a report published by the Kyiv Independent on June 10. citing officials and sources involved in the planning process. According to the report, Russia destroyed roughly 9 gigawatts of Ukraine's power generation capacity last winter, leaving the country vulnerable to future energy shortages and disruptions. Ukraine is now pushing ahead with backup power projects and emergency energy measures as key winter preparedness deadlines continue to draw closer. Reports said the Ukrainian government is increasingly relying on state funds to finance the program as additional support from international partners has yet to fully materialize. The Energy Resilience Plan was designed to help cities and local authorities prepare in advance for future Russian attacks rather than scrambling to restore services after strikes occur. According to reports, discussions on the plan began among government officials as early as January as concerns mounted over Ukraine's energy security. Ukraine formally unveiled the Energy Resilience Strategy in Brussels in March 2026, presenting it as a long-term effort to safeguard critical infrastructure. Ukrainian Minister Oleksiy Kuleba presented the plan during a European Union conference, where Kyiv sought to build support for the initiative among international partners. Despite the urgency of the project, funding continues to be viewed as the single biggest obstacle to implementing Ukraine's broader energy security strategy, according to the report. The European Union has already provided around €3 billion in energy assistance to Ukraine since the start of Russia's full-scale invasion, according to a report cited by the Kyiv Independent. As Kyiv searched for ways to finance its €5.4 billion energy resilience plan, officials reportedly explored multiple funding options while continuing discussions with international partners. According to the report, the European Union ruled out creating a separate funding package specifically for Ukraine's energy resilience program despite ongoing financing needs. Brussels had already approved a much larger €90 billion support loan for Ukraine, which is intended to cover a broad range of military and civilian requirements. Reports said Kyiv examined the possibility of using part of that €90 billion European support package to help finance key elements of the energy resilience plan. Ukrainian officials reportedly weighed whether funds from the broader EU loan program could be redirected toward projects aimed at strengthening energy security and winter preparedness. Patriot missile shortages have deepened as US allies face growing uncertainty over future deliveries and replenishment schedules. Lockheed Martin Vice President Brian Dunn said allied nations could not be given firm timelines on when new missile deliveries would arrive. Dunn said final allocation decisions would be made by Washington rather than industry, according to the Financial Times. The warning came as demand for Patriot interceptors surged following the Iran conflict and other global security crises. Countries including Germany, Poland, Japan, the UAE, and Saudi Arabia continue to rely heavily on Patriot air defense systems. Dunn said Lockheed Martin was rapidly expanding production capacity for PAC-3 interceptor missiles to meet rising demand. The company has agreed to increase annual output from about 650 missiles to roughly 2,000 by 2033. The production expansion forms part of a broader $4.7 billion agreement reached between Lockheed Martin and the Pentagon. Dunn said higher production would help ease shortages over time, but would not guarantee quicker deliveries to customers. He stressed that Lockheed Martin has no authority over which countries receive missiles first under US allocation decisions. On June 10, the Financial Times reported that US allies had already been warned to expect delays in Patriot missile deliveries. Ukraine has continued to depend heavily on Patriot batteries to defend against Russian missile and drone attacks. Analysts said interceptor shortages have made the task of protecting Ukrainian cities increasingly difficult. The Iran conflict has also added fresh pressure as US stockpiles face significant operational demands. According to the Financial Times, Washington has moved to replenish inventories that were depleted during recent conflicts. The supply crunch has also encouraged several European countries to explore alternatives to US-made air defense systems. Lockheed executive Paula Hartley said many allied governments were becoming increasingly frustrated by delivery delays. Hartley said several countries were now questioning both US availability and broader policy decisions regarding allocations.